So I'm from Philly, and here, you know, I don't know how global the concept of the Philly cheesesteak is. I don't know. I mean, have you guys heard of Philly cheesesteak? It's like a cultural food in Philly. So I'm from Philly,
Okay.
and you know, the cheesesteak is like the you know, the city food. And you know, everyone talks about who has the best cheesesteak. Now, let me remind you what a cheesesteak is. It is beef in bread with cheese. That's a cheesesteak. Now, if you look at this, there's 64 teams just on this list. Okay. So, and I share this with friends once in a while for the perspective that I'll share with you here. This is just the top 64 places that sell cheesesteaks. There's a lot more. Okay. My point in sharing this is there's actually 64 people that have the same product that are all doing very well in business.
Okay. Makes sense.
And it's a simple product that they all do a little differently, a little bit special to meet their specific users' tastes and needs. And a lot of people eat at many of these places. So anytime someone says, oh no, someone else is building the same thing, my point is A, that's validation. And B, great, do something a little bit different. 64 different people have a way to throw beef in a piece of bread with cheese. And they're all doing well in business. And they're all busy. A lot of these places have lines around the building to get into to get a cheesesteak. So if you ever worry someone else is building the same thing as me, don't. Just do it. And I mean, you could always think in your head, I'm going to do it, quote, better. Find out what your particular users want and make it to their taste. So, I mean, it's just perspective. Like, you know, I used to use the example of, you know, where I used to live closer to the city. There's actually one little plaza that has 5 Ethiopian restaurants in the same plaza. And on a Friday night, they're all busy. They literally all opened up right next to each other. And they're all busy. Because if it's a product people want, and a lot of people are offering it, people are going to try different flavors. Then you need to make it appealing for people to continue to come back and use yours. So, I mean, look, I use Camino, but I still check Margin and Solend, and I check all those other ones all the time. And I have tried them. Camino is my restaurant of choice right now. Could change. So, yeah, never feel. And the other thing is this: don't worry that someone's going to, quote, steal your idea. You know, that's you know, this is an open source world.
It's already been stolen, so don't worry about it.
Yeah, Nate, I would say this is the 64 team bracket of cheesesteaks in Philly. And these are just the top 64. Like all 64 of these are in business and crowded every day. But today is about diving into user stories, and we'll probably take about 10 minutes now to go through this, but you all have the examples and these slides that we're going to show are in the Discord. But really, one of the main reasons we started doing the user story is we get so deep into the tech, we forget about our users. You got to always remember, what is the user's experience going to be that this tech is going to enable? As you know, you start getting crafty in the tech and you start getting sophisticated and doing all this stuff, and you forget This needs to create a smooth, seamless, appealing user experience for the people on the other end. So we remind you of this in a variety of ways, user stories being one of them. Nate, you want to talk about this?
Yeah, and it's it goes a little deeper than this too, as you've heard me say, and I hope the point's getting across, and I think a lot of you are seeing this, is that your capstone LOI is really just a continual refinement. And so a lot of you posted, oh, I did some research and my idea changed. Well, that's exactly part of this process. We want your idea to change so that you can actually get it to a point where you can build it. And so figuring out your user stories and who they actually are is really the fundamental point of being able to build something that works. And that's kind of the point we're trying to make here. So as we get into the user stories, really be thinking about who is that key user you're going to try to build this for right now. And you really need to start boiling these things down, because you can't go out and build it for every archetype of every possible customer you have right now, because that just isn't going to work. That's not how you'll get a POC out the door.
Yeah, and the last thing about that before we flip to the next slide is simply we are asking you to do all these things so that you continuously think about your product as a whole product, not just as a piece of anchor code. You got to think about it holistically.
And yeah, I guess I'll add there, this process here, and I've said this before, will help you with several parts of your pitch deck as well. This will kind of fast track you to getting some of those pages of your pitch deck done. So yeah, I'll kick it back over to Jeff here.
I mean, so the LOI, the user story, and the architectural diagram are actually 3 core pieces of your pitch deck. So when it
Possibly
gets to pitch deck, yeah,
possibly 4 to 10, yeah.
Well, because of the PMF part, yep. Because the research do this.
Yeah.
And this is also a skill that employers find very appealing. Like one of our guys got hired last month, and what the person said was, I really liked your user story and your GitHub repository. So yeah, basically it's a short, simple narrative that you're going to describe each of your user personas journey using your application. Okay, so there's going to be more than one persona. It's not just going to be a retail person coming to Connect Wallet and buy an NFT. You're also going to want to make sure that developers can understand how to use your product and build on top of it. You also need to know, for that first example, how do creators list their NFTs on. So think about the different potential users and take it. This isn't a linear process where you're going to start at the top and say once upon a time.
Exactly.
User A, what are all the things? And bullet it out first. It's actually called a process analysis. Write the steps in a single bullet and then flesh that out. And what this is going to do, and Nate and Andre will talk a lot more about this in the coming weeks, this is actually going to feed your architectural diagram, because every action that your user does needs a function to be able to execute it and give back to that person a result.
It'll be a requirement in your architectural diagram, as we call them. You'll actually need to state, user needs to do this, this, and this. And that's then going to define kind of your states and your programs and how those all flow together.
Yeah.
So
this will guide your architectural diagram. This will give you an idea. I used to say, go through and take all the verbs and they become functions, and go through and take all your nouns and they become your data and your structs. I'm an old English teacher, so that's why I think that way. Good, Nate.
This is important. This is from the good old business administration world. This goes back to what Jeff was saying. They need to be boiled down, concrete, granular things. They can't be like, I want to create an NFT that lists all different types of records, CDs, cassettes, and MP3s, and right. This needs to actually be really boiled down and independent. And what I mean by that is, you need to be able to keep asking yourself, does this have anything else tied to it, right? And so it should really be a short, concise sentence. For instance, I want to, and then we'll go into this. I've got an example of it. I want to create an advertising NFT that allows people to sell ads, right? Though that's very simple and concrete. It doesn't say who, how, when, where, how. And so that gets you into the point of they need to be flexible, right? They need to be able to be changed. And the important point is they need to demonstrate the value that it's creating for the user that's going to be using it, right? What is it that these people are coming to the protocol for, right? This is a question I ask you a lot. Sure, you can create anything with code, but if it doesn't provide a valuable function, there's really no point in building it, right? And then these next kind of 4, 5, and 6 are also important because, as Jeff was mentioning and as I'm mentioning, you're going to have tons of user portfolio, tons of user personas. And so you'll just A, B, C, D, E, F. These are all people that are going to come, all users, clients that are coming to your protocol to do something, right? To create some kind of, to capitalize on an exchange of value, right? And so you need to be able to then prioritize these different user flows because you can't build them all out right now, right? And that gets into kind of the idea of small, granular, and testable, right? At the end of the day, you need to have these be very small, concrete things that, as we were just saying, are requirements that fit into an architectural diagram that you can then assign, oh, this is a state, this is a program, right? This program connects to this state. And that then makes it testable, right? And so this kind of comes full circle with that.
Yeah, and I mean, look, I want to emphasize that last part about testable because, you know, we've been saying this a lot and people don't really believe us until they're living it. Ask anybody that graduated last cohort. Writing the test is going to be a hard part that you're probably not thinking about. And it's only hard because people don't think about it until the end and they think they're done. Doing this user story and really clearly outlining what your user's going to do and what they should expect as a result, that's pseudo-coding your test.
Yeah, and it's making it simple, right? You can't test something that's complex. You're just going to run in circles and errors, right? So, you know, tips for writing here, you know, we've covered all this, but again, it's super important. You don't want to be writing paragraphs here. You need to focus on the user, how they're coming to your protocol, what's the value that they're going to expect, but in a very clear, concise language, right? This isn't super descriptive. This is like as clear as you can possibly get. Avoid using, you know, degen terms. Avoid using, even for this point in this purpose, avoid using, you know, anchor terminology, right? Just figure out exactly what it is that they're doing in very simple terms. And you want to write in the active voice. Mr. English teacher here can help you out with that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, the thing about number 3 that's very important for you guys to know, you may or may not know this, is most investors and judges in hackathons and stuff like that are not technical.
Exactly.
So you got to know your audience. Your audience here is a non-technical audience. It's a user, or it's a retail investor, or it's an investment team that doesn't know a lot of the technical stuff. So don't baffle them with the bullshit of deep technical terminology. And then active voice, the simple explanation of active voice is saying, you know, the user will buy an NFT rather than the NFT will be bought by the user. The active voice is the subject of the sentences at the beginning of the sentence, not in a prepositional phrase. Okay? I will tell you about user stories, not the user stories will be told to you by me. That's the difference between active and passive voice. If the subject of your statement is at the end of your sentence, that's passive. Hopefully everyone got that. Wow, I still know how to explain that. All right, go
I
ahead.
mean, I say that's probably, and again, if that little part is tripping you up, it's not necessarily the most important. What's most important is really the simplicity and the concreteness that you can tell this in, less so the exact grammatical
Well,
format that.
yeah, and I mean, look, the way to think of it without getting like that, still to use some grammar, is subject, verb, object. The user does to what object? The user logs in to the application. The user buys an NFT. Subject, verb, object. It's very simple, and keep it that simple. Good, Nate.
Cool. All right. So I think that brings us pretty much to the end here. Before we get into an example, as you think about this, right? And I already mentioned it. I'll just hit this again. The idea here that you need to prioritize these different user stories. You're not going to be able to build for all of them right now. And this is what's important. If you can boil this down to one or two super high priorities of your user personas, that then helps you start with that POC that you can later expand to incorporate C, D, E, F, G that might need different refinements that would slow you down at this point right now if you tried to build it all at once. And so this is why it's super important, because I know a lot of you have some pretty robust ideas. And even though we've tried to boil it down some through the LOI and our talks that we've been having, you still need to go further. And this is the great way of being able to do it. And then it puts you in kind of that sprint mindset. And you just go and bang all those out. So if you want to open that up, Jeff, we'll drop this in the drop this in. We're not going to spend time going over this right now, but this is, I'm going to show you guys real quick.
Yeah, this is actually in the Google Classroom as well for everybody.
This is a template and a guidance to show you guys kind of what we're expecting, kind of have you refine your product market fit and your target users as you've gone through your LOI. This will be the next iteration. Any of you that have changed that idea, this is a great place for you. Keep asking me, well, my idea changed. Well, right here, this is how you're going to update and communicate to us that it's been changed. Is okay, your idea changed. This is now the target users and of that. Scroll down just a little bit more, Jeff, and we'll move on. Yeah. So as you see here, user stories. You see the attributes, the functionality, and you'll see that we scroll down just a little bit more, that they have a priority, right? So you've got all these different concrete things. And if you look, like just the user interactions, advertiser can manage and track their ad NFT, right? That should actually be broken down more. I'm not sure how that even stayed in there. That should actually be advertiser can mint, advertiser can manage, advertiser can track. So it's always a constant form of refinement, even our presentations here. But a lot of this is, scroll down just a little bit more. As you'll see, these ones are much more concrete, right? The platform allows publishers to discover and acquire fractions of ad NFTs. This is good. This is all right. This is the unrefined one. So what we're doing here is, if we keep scrolling down, you're actually going to see, this is the old link. There's two versions of this, because I wanted to make a point. As you see up top, the name of the doc is unrefined. And I'm glad it actually came up like this. You're actually getting firsthand what I'm telling you, right? You're seeing here how this is actually too complicated still. And so in the actual Google Classroom, you'll see one that's unrefined, and then you'll see one that's refined that actually goes through and does what I'm talking about right now, breaking this down even further, right? Because as you can see, there's more than one thing happening in each one of these descriptions. And what you need to do is actually break that down further.